discussing today and really getting great perspective on the disastrous border policies of the Biden administration, and then Florida's position that we don't want to be facilitating, which are very harmful policies, not only in terms of the rule of law, not only in terms of what drug cartels may be introducing into our country, but also the treatment of people who are basically being trafficked as part of what is effectively the largest human smuggling operation in American history, illegal operation. And so, our perspective is that those are bad policies. If you look at just the absolute explosion of illegal migrants across the southern border, it's unlike anything we've ever seen. Just go back to 2020. It was a much different situation. And we in the state of Florida actually sent support last summer to help Texas and to help interdict. The problem is, you interdict and then you give them to the feds, and then the feds will do things like fly people in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. and drop them off. They will provide, bus, all this other stuff, and then put into different communities. There's no papers, no one knows who the hell a lot of these people are, so it's chaos. But the thing that really stuck out to me were two things. One, I think most people understand this. This is not like Mexicans coming across by and large. These are people from all over the world. I mean, when we were there, we saw people from Africa, the Middle East, South America, you name it. The APB has basically gone out to say, why would you want to go through 3 years of an immigration process? It takes us years to vet. So if we want to bring a doctor in from like Nigeria, it takes like 3 years or maybe even more. Why would you want to go through that? Just come across the border illegally and you're basically home free. And so just the total breadth of people that were coming from so many different places around the world. I mean, there's actually countries that are closer to Florida or closer to the U.S., but they're going all the way through this roundabout. The other thing that really stuck out was when our folks were interdicting people, they would be asked, where would you like to go? And a lot of them said Florida. Now, I mean, that's true. I mean, like you look at where people from failed states in the United States want to go, they want to come to Florida. And I guess people that are fleeing, bad places, not that they're anything that, and we'll talk a little bit more about Pedro Pan and the communists and everything. I mean, they're not qualified as refugees because they just want to be in America for whatever reason. But it was a huge amount. So people, when we sent the folks to help, they were like, well, this is a Texas problem. This is a border. What does that have to do with Florida? It does have to do with Florida, unfortunately. I wish it had nothing to do, but it does. And so that was what we were able to do. Now, we have some folks here who are going to discuss some of the stuff. I just think, there's a lot of bad analogies that get made in modern political discourse, but to equate what's going on with the southern border, with mass trafficking of humans, illegal entry, drugs, all this other stuff, with Operation Pedro Pan, quite frankly, is disgusting. It's wrong. It is not even close to the same thing. We had people that were coming because they were fleeing a communist dictatorship that was persecuting them. Those are not illegal immigrants. These are people that were sanctioned to come by the United States government. And I've talked with Max Alvarez, some of these other people, and said, if Cuba was free in the 1960s, we would have never accepted communist refugees into this country. We were doing it because it was the right thing to do, but it was also consistent with our national interest in fighting communism. And the same reason, and we had a lot of, obviously, involvement in Cuba over the years, same reason why people fleeing the communist regime in Vietnam welcomed into the United States. We had, of course, a lot of involvement there. And so to equate those things with what we're seeing there is just frankly wrong, and it's not something that I think most people that have any sense of what's going on would think that that's something that's good. If you look at the amount of people, you'll hear things about unaccompanied alien children, and that's different than refugees, people that qualify as refugees. These are basically illegal entrants. It's important to point out, though, when they talk about, quote, children, most of these people are what would be considered in most parts of the world military-age males, 15 to 17. I mean, that's who's typically coming across. I think it's CBS News reported 75% of everybody, I think in 2021, was 15 to 17. and the overwhelming majority of those were males. So that's what it is. So I think it's sometimes portrayed as like, these are like, like some baby dropped over the border or something like that. That's just not what's happening. But regardless of that, it is not a good policy to want to incentivize unaccompanied minors to be taking these types of voyages, because there's a huge problem with what human smugglers are doing, human traffickers, sex traffickers, drug cartels, and I can tell you this is the golden age for the cartels since Biden became president. I mean, they are eating our lunch every single day with what's going on down there, and the sheer increase in what you're seeing is really unbelievable. So just in 2021, I mean, you're looking at about 2 million people coming illegally across the southern border, and really they're not showing any inclination to want to change their policies in a really radical direction. If you look at the amount of fentanyl, and I know Ashley will probably want to talk about this, there's been a fentanyl come across the border. There's been enough to kill like 275 million Americans. And if you look, in 2021, fentanyl was the leading cause of death for Americans between the age of 18 and 45. And so those policies are poisoning this country. You also look at the methamphetamines that are coming across the border. There used to be a lot of that produced in the United States. Not as much anymore. Most of it is coming across the southern border. And so, you deal with that here in South Florida, but I can tell you, you go to other parts of Florida, the percentage of folks who get involved, unfortunately, in meth is way, way too high, particularly in some of our rural counties. That's the #1 scourge that they're fighting. So that's coming across the border in record time. And so, our view is, and then I also think about, if these policies are so great, why are you hiding them at 2 o'clock in the morning? How come you're not being honest? Why aren't you giving the state a heads up about who you're bringing in to the state? How come you're not blaring this from the rafters so that everybody knows how great you're doing? And I think it's because people understand that what's being done is a violation of federal law. Clearly, from a policy perspective, it's having hugely negative consequences, but it's also a failure of the president to fulfill his constitutional oath that the laws be faithfully executed. He is not taking care to do so, and the result is what we're seeing. But I also think to myself, Florida has been very clear. We're not a sanctuary state for illegal immigration. We've made that clear in our laws. We made that clear in our policies. You have other states who have done differently. California, New York, some of those places. And yet they're sending more illegal immigrants to Florida than they are even to California, which is twice our size. And so if this policy is so great, and you have all these sanctuary states that are always virtue signaling, mostly against Trump from 4 years ago, why not then just redirect there? I can tell you, we're getting money from the legislature because we will be redirecting to Delaware and California and these other sanctuary states. That's going to happen in Florida. But until then, we're in a situation where they continue to do this without providing notification, always under the radar, clandestine, and doing it in a way to try to escape any type of public scrutiny. So I'm really glad that we have a great panel here today. We'll have the Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, then we'll go on the horn, and you guys can speak your piece.
Great. Well, good morning. Thank you, Governor, for being here. And of course,